So, we've done question 1, we've done question 2, we've done question 3, we come to question 4. Question 4 is the same amount of marks as question 1, 2 and 3 added together. If we don't get question 4 right, it doesn't matter what we've done in question 1, 2 and 3. It's game over, okay? So, we've got to make sure that this question above all of them is the one we have absolutely nailed down so we can be an absolute success, okay? Luckily, it is the same sort of approach, the same layers, the same focus effect link, the same methods, plus a few more as question 2. So we are already using skills that we've already developed and we've already enhanced for question 2. It's just a case of tweaking the way we apply them ever so slightly in question 4 to get 20 marks instead of the 8 marks in question 2. Okay, so now on to question 4. Question 4, there is a bit of a git, to be honest, because they give you all of this, loads of writing, loads of these words, and it throws people off straight away, okay? First of all, let's clock where we're talking. So we're talking about lines 19 to the end of the text, okay? A student having read this section of text said the writer makes the setting very unsettling and uncomfortable. The entire scene almost seems like a nightmare. Now what we want to do is we want to turn that big, nasty, horrible statement into something we can hook into and something that we can latch all of our ideas to. We're going to use these words here, unsettling and uncomfortable, okay? Essentially, this question is asking, does the writer present the place as unsettling and uncomfortable? Okay, so that's step 1, highlight the hooks. Okay, step 2, I don't know what your GCSE is going to be, but I tell you, you are going to want to agree, but this place is not a picnic. This land is not nice. Yes, it is unsettling. Yes, it is uncomfortable, but true evaluation, and they lead you to it with that question, to what extent do you agree? True evaluation offers both sides. So we're going to agree it's unsettling, uncomfortable, but we're going to look at the other side. We then, step 3, is we now need 3 rich quotes. Now, these rich quotes are the same as what we were talking about with the language. The rich quote is a quote that's got lots and lots of methods, lots and lots of things to say about it. But there's also something we need to be aware of here, because these 3 quotes have got some rules. We need at least one that agrees with the statement. We need at least one that disagrees with the statement. But then we also need one non-language choice. Now, our language choices we've already talked about. We've already talked about our figurative language. We talked about that in question 2. We've already talked about our alliteration. Again, we talked about that in question 2. We've already talked about words, and we've already talked about sentences. Now we've got some non-language choices, and there are 3. Okay, 3. Well, there's more than 3. There's millions and millions and millions of them, but there's 3 that I would be concerning myself for my GCSE. 1 is pathetic fallacy, so that is any time the writer uses the weather or the environment. 2 is characterization, so the choice of character is going to tell us information. And then finally, it's symbolism. So there are many things in any text that could represent something else. Now, the reason why I would hammer down on these 7 is because AQA are not going to give you a text that doesn't involve some weather, because virtually every text takes place in an environment of some description. Even if it's indoors, they might refer to the moonlight or the sun coming through the windows, etc. They're not going to give you a text that doesn't have a character. They're not going to give you a text that doesn't have a symbol. They're not going to give you a text that doesn't have words or sentences. And the chances of them giving you a text with at least one simile and maybe a piece of alliteration in it are almost guaranteed. So don't make it hard for yourself by looking at this big, nasty, horrible question and then getting lost in, oh my goodness, what possible things could I talk about? Make it easy for yourself. These are the things that we are after. Okay? So let's find those 3 quotes. Now, remember, we are looking from line 19 to the end. So with my highlighter, I'm going to draw that line along there because I don't want anything above there. I want to be looking at line 19 to the end. Okay? Now, I want my eyes to be led to rich quotes. So I'm looking at this one here. Barren, silent, godless. That is one little fragmented sentence that I've got loads of commas in there, make it really disjointed and really broken. I've got the word choices are barren and silent. They've also got the figurative language of godless, okay? So I've got stacks I want to say about that, and that agrees this place is really unsettling and really not very nice, okay? Let's have a little read through. What else can I see? And I'm going to talk about this one here. He just sat there holding the binoculars and watching. He just sat there holding the binoculars and watching the ashen daylight congeal over the land. Now I've got another one that agrees, because again, doesn't sound very nice. I've got some non-language choices here now, because I've got he, so I've got the unnamed characterization. I've got a character that no one knows anything about. I've got some pathetic fallacy. It's talking about the daylight. So what does that reflect? What does that tell us? We've got some figurative language. You don't get ashy daylight. So the fact it's been compared to ash, what does that tell us? And then also congeal. Congeal is when you put, I don't know, two things in a mixing bowl that don't go well together. They congeal, they don't actually mix nicely. It congeals into a mess. Again, more figurative language. Okay? So now I've got some decisions to make, because I've got loads of methods in this one, which agrees, and I've got loads of methods in this one, which agrees, but I need one that disagrees. I need one that says, actually, this isn't the worst place in the world. This isn't so massively uncomfortable. And I know from when I read this text that at the back end, we see the father and the son walking off into the distance, and they are each the other's world's entire. Now, if I was with someone that was my whole world, I don't think I'd feel uncomfortable. I don't think I'd feel in pain or in agony, okay? So I've got now 3 really nice quotes. I've got 2 that agree and 1 disagree. If you want 2 that disagree and 1 agree, that's utterly fine. But I've gone for 2 that agree, 1 that disagrees, and all of them are dripping with methods, dripping with ideas for what we can talk about, okay? So now we come back to our answer. I'm going to do the first paragraph with you, okay? Before we get onto our paragraph, we need to do our introduction, okay? Our introduction is heavily based on the quotes we've just chosen, all right? So if we remind ourselves of them, we've got this one which talks about the world being almost without morals. If it's got no God, it's without morals. If we're saying that they're watching ashen daylight, we're talking about how there is a permanent darkness and how that even new days bring disappointment. I'm only writing this in note form because it's going to help my introduction, as you'll see. But then we've also got at the end now that they have got their world is with each other. Okay? Now, your introduction should read almost like a bit of a summary of the points you're going to make. Okay? So, again, we start with the writer. We always start with the writer. McCarthy presents, let's do the agree first of all, presents the environment as, and let's use the words from the question so we show the examiner what we know we're talking about, as unsettling and uncomfortable because it is a land that, let me just make that a bit more straight because you can only see my hand, it is a land that lacks morals, is a land that even brings disappointment with each new day. But, and this is where the examiner knows I'm going to get some top marks now, but the 2 characters have the security and solace of being with each other. So it is not the nightmare the student believes. So there's quite a bit going on in that introduction, okay? Quite a bit going on, but it is essentially, when I say a bit going on, it's more involved in the question 2-1. But question 2-1 was only 8 marks, and this is 20, so it's going to be more involved, okay? it should read as a summary of the points you're going to make. When I go on to my first paragraph, I'm going to talk about it's a land that lacks morals. By my second paragraph, I'll be talking about how it even brings disappointment with each new day. And then by the end, I'm going to talk about the security and the solace of the two characters that they have together. Okay? So my intro has been shaped by the quotes that I've chosen. Okay? Right. Now let's get on to our first paragraph. I agree that this environment. Let's have a little look here. Let's do barren, silent, godless, because it's a nice rich quote. It's nice and short, but there's loads to say about it. So, I agree that this environment is unsettling, for it is an empty setting. Bereft is a fancy word for lacking. So lacking all culture, identity, and morals. So my point here is a little bit different to question 2 and question 3. Question 2 and question 3, they wanted you to give a method. You had to give a language method or you had to give a structural method. Okay? Not here. The point here this time is your argument. So this is what you're going to say. Okay? Then we put our evidence. Again, there's no bonus marks for embedding your quotes or anything like that, so let's just keep it nice and simple. This is clear from the line. Open it up. Barren, silent, godless. There's our evidence. And this time it is rich. We do need our rich evidence. Okay? Now we are basically following exactly the same as question 2. Question 2, we talked about how we had to go through each layer, and each layer had 3 things. It had a focus, it had an effect, and it had a link. We're doing identical here, okay? So, let's put that there so we can see where we've got up to so far. Let's bring that down a little bit actually so you can see what's happening. So focus, effect, link. Let's now go on to our first layer. Let's talk about the sentence. Let's blow the examiner's mind. Let's go straight in with the sentence, okay? So this fragmented sentence with heavy commas between every word is disjointed and broken. Ooh, that's a funny way of writing and broken despite its simplicity. So I've got my focus. Let's get some ticking going on here. I've got my focus. I'm focusing on the sentence. The effect is it is disjointed and it is broken. And then I link that back to my text. This mirrors the difficulty and challenge of dragging through each day. Happy days. Let's mark that as one layer. One layer of focus, effect, and link. Okay. Now we can go on to our next layer. So now I'm going to talk about. We've talk about sentences. Let's get some words in there, and I'm going to talk about the word silent. Okay. What it's interesting to use a sensory word to describe a physical thing. So let's talk about that. The writer also deploys a. Now the vast majority of words are either going to be nouns, verbs, adjectives or adverbs. If you are describing something as silent, then it is an adjective. So the writer also deploys an adjective when describing the land as silent. Now, Whenever I talk about words, I talk about connotations. As I say, it's exactly the same as your question 2. We talked about these 4 things here in question 2. We talked about sentences being about pace, which is what we just talked about in the previous point. Words are to do with connotations, which we are now going to talk about. Okay? Alliteration, just while we're here, was sound, and figurative language was image. Lots more on that in question 2, lots more of that on the other video I do on embossing methods. So the writer also deploys an adjective when describing the land as silent. This connotes, so when I think of silent, what do I think of? This connotes with something potentially peaceful, because if I'm in silence, then that's a nice peaceful thing for me, but also potentially threatening, because if I'm walking through a jungle and it's silent, I am not at peace. That is making me nervous. Okay, so now I link that back to my text. This mirrors how the silence of the environment could be both unsettling but also a source of peace. Once again, focus, effect, link. There's another layer. Happy days. Okay, and I'm just going to do the same again. Okay, let's find another method from there. Let's talk about the figurative language godless. Okay, McCarthy also uses a metaphor of godless to create an image of a land short of hope, morals, and religious guidance. Again, focus, again, effect. Let's link that back. This portrays a hell-like image of a place where evil runs free, and there is no perceived escape or hope for a new alternative. Okay, again, next layer. So can you see that for each of these layers, exactly the same as question 2, we are identifying our methods, we are identifying the focuses, we are identifying the effect of them, so what they're actually doing, and then we link it back to our text supporting our argument. And we would keep doing this. I've done this one so far, I've got 3 layers in this one so far, okay? And there is no limit. I've got to get to 3 paragraphs and I've got about 20 to 25 minutes to do it in. So got to get as many layers in as I can in that situation. We started getting to a point here where we are looking at it from both sides. We started to look here about how that method could be both an agree and a disagree. That's brilliant. That's the sort of thing we want to be continuing as we go through. Because true evaluation is when we would be finding a quote and we would be offering how it agrees and how we would disagree. Okay? For example, if I wanted to carry on here, I could go on to the word barren. And barren, yes, it means empty. But empty is also a massive opportunity. If there's nothing there, then anything can be built, anything can be created. So we can go on to something that is far more exciting and far more exciting into the future. So bear that in mind as you are going through. You want to be offering both the agree and the disagree, but you never step away from that layering approach and you never step away from that focus, effect, link. Okay? One thing we have not included yet is any non-language choices. Now, that's not a problem. You don't need to include it in every single paragraph. What is important though is if I go on to my next paragraph now and I start talking about this quote here that we talked about, I must get into the fact about the pathetic fallacy. I must get onto the fact about this characterization. And we deal with those in exactly the same way as figurative language. The daylight creates an image of something that's new hope, a new beginning, a new chance. So what does that tell me about this setting? Well, it shows that it's going to be moving away from the evil of the past, moving away from the destruction and disappointment, and there's the potential for a bright new future ahead of them. Okay, so we still follow the same layers, the same focus, effect, link, but this time with our non-language, we go that a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to write the whole point, evidence, explain again. If I had my point and I had my evidence, I just want to model very briefly how I would do a non-language feature, and I'm going to do that I'm going to do the characterization, because I just taught through passive fallacy, so I'm going to talk about the characterization. So I'm talking about this quote here. Okay, I'm going to talk about this characterization of he. So, again, start with the writer. McCarthy uses characterization when describing he. Use characterization when describing he. So there is my focus. Now I'm going to talk about the effect of that. Of all the things he could have used, he just chose a character and then called him he. We'd never find out this guy's name, okay? The writer keeps the character nameless and therefore identityless. So that's the effect, and now I need to link it back to my text, demonstrating how this harsh land has taken from him physically, emotionally, but also in terms of his identity, his worth, and his belonging. So exactly the same, isn't it? There's my focus, characterization, there's my effect, that's what it does, and then there's my link back to the text. This would be one of my layers for my next paragraph, okay? As you see, follow it exactly the same way as we did with the language, okay?